In a moment, we will speak to Jamal El Shayyal. He is in Cairo's Nasr city, where pro-government supporters have gathered. But first, let's go to Tahrir Square and speak to Hoda Abdel Hamid, where anti-government protesters have been gathering. Hoda, if you would, are the numbers there growing?
Well, they are growing, the numbers here, but we have to underline that this is not actually the mass protest. This is just the build-up to June 30th, by which there has been this huge campaign called Tamarrud, or in the English word is rebel, and that campaign has been going on for a couple of months now. There's been really revolutionary youth who had gone down to the street across the country to gather as many signatures as they could as a symbolic gesture. So then after that they could have a popular support, a street support to call for the overthrow of President Mohamed Morsi. And these calls have already started today here in Tahrir. All the slogans are either directed against him, telling him leave, telling him the country, we will not sell the country to the Muslim Brotherhood. And there are also many slogans against the Muslim Brotherhood itself. But as people here say, this is just the build-up.
And Hoda, if you would, what else is going on around Egypt?
Well, there is a very charged atmosphere throughout the country, and that's been going on for a few days. There are similar protests going on in Alexandria. A group of anti-Morsi protesters were marching, heading towards the headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood there. That's when there were scuffles that happened between the two sides. According to the health officials in Alexandria, 29 people were wounded there. But as I said earlier, these scuffles have been going on in several towns and cities across the country, specifically in the Nile Delta. There's at least 4 people who have died already. So it's really a very charged atmosphere. And I think it's even more charged by the rhetorics and the threats and the warnings that are coming out from both sides of the divide, leaving many Egyptians very, very scared of what could happen in the coming days, what could happen on June 30th. And if you walk around the city here in Cairo, people were stocking up on food, trying to stock up on fuel whenever they could find that. And there's a lot of talk of civil war. People are worried. People are so concerned that this whole build-up will just reach a climax on June 30th.
Hoda, it is very loud there. I'm going to try one more question with you. You're describing a very tense situation, but what is the security situation like there at Tahrir Square? Are we talking police, military on hand?
Absolutely no security forces or military. What you do have is volunteers who are cordoning off some areas, and they are protecting women. You know, the Tahrir Square came to have a very bad reputation at a certain point because women were sexually harassed. I would say brutally sexually harassed. Well, what you have today is actually a group of volunteers who are cordoning off women. There's a lot of women just in front of the main stage. It seems very peaceful at the moment. And then at all the entrance and exits of this square, you have cars that are parked to block any kind of incoming vehicle, and you have volunteers roaming around. And then you have the people on the stage who are calling for peaceful, 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 peaceful. But this is just people taking upon themselves the security of the square.
All right, Hoda, appreciate it. Stand by for just a moment, if you would, please. Let's go live now to Jamal El Shayyal in Cairo's Nasr city, where pro-government supporters have gathered. And Jamal, if you would, describe the situation, the mood of the gathering where you are.
Well, Tony, much like Tahrir, a very loud group of people here in the thousands. I'll step out of the shot, let the camera maybe do a bit of work to see how the situation is here. Essentially, they are mainly supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood, but also from other political parties, mainly ones with a religious root to them. But there are, for example, some labor unions and others who have gathered here. And essentially what they've done is they've built this, or they've billed this rather, as the Friday to protect the legitimacy. They say that there is a difference between opposing the president as what they claim to be a legitimate right and trying to overthrow the president, which is what they're accusing the Rebel campaign and the National Salvation Front and others of trying to do. So they say, well, come June 30th, you can protest against the president, but do not come anywhere near the presidential palace, don't try and overthrow him, don't try and oust him. And that's why geographically their presence here in Nasr city, only a few kilometers away from Tahrir Palace, is very significant. Now, the rhetoric, as we've heard, has been pretty divisive coming up to this one-year anniversary. But when you speak to those people down here in Nasr city and Al Square, they say that President Morsi has achieved a lot. They point to the fact that he's managed to march on towards making Egypt a democratic country, taking the reins away from the military and away from Mubarak regime, but claim that the remnants are those who are trying to stop Morsi's progression and stop the revival of Egypt. Having said that, there is also some sort of acknowledgement that there are mistakes, but they believe that oppose him as you wish, do not try and overthrow him. That is the red line. That's what they've been saying for the past hours here, Tony.
Okay, Jamal, I asked this question of Hoda. I'm going to ask it of you as well. If you would, take a moment and describe the security presence there.
In terms of national security apparatus, the state security, it's nowhere to be seen. But the situation here is pretty calm, considering the general tense overtone which is apparent in terms of the political discourse that has been dividing the nation. On the ground here, it is pretty calm, but that's because they are all in unison. They're all singing off the same hymn sheet, so to speak. However, not far from here, for example, at one of the main malls, Egypt's largest mall, City Stars, there are army units that are there to protect the hotels. Bear in mind that this road that I'm standing on here now is the main road that leads to Cairo International Airport. If you drive 10 minutes roughly down this behind me, you'll reach Cairo's airport. So it's interesting to know that there has to be some sort of a security presence in and around this area, but so far they've been kind of keeping a hands-off approach, so to speak, to ensure that there's no confrontation. The main issue, the main challenge for the security services is to ensure that come June 30th, if there is going to be an opposition march, they do not come anywhere near those here. And those here who are camped out here do not come anywhere near the opposition, because if they do come close to each other, then it could be a very explosive atmosphere indeed, Tony.
Boy, important days for Egypt. Let's take a moment to thank our correspondent Jamal El Shayyal. He's in Cairo. Cairo's Nasr city, where pro-government supporters have gathered, and in Tahrir Square, Hoda Abdel Hamid, where anti-government protesters have been gathering. Thanks to both of you.